is like the holy grail. This is my dream car right here for as far as a Mustang goes. These were only made in 03 and 04. And basically what it is a supercharged V8. The owner of this one bought it pretty built. It's around 500 wheel horsepower, and it's just tons of fun. It's got a stage 3 clutch in it, so it's kind of a pain to get started, especially in traffic. But once you're going, it's amazing, and the whine is just incredible. You barely put your foot in, and you're up to speed. It's awesome. He does have a short shifter in it. It's a little different than the one from the first time I drove this car, which was a few months ago. That one, like, the throws from gear to gear were just tiny. You could hardly tell what gear you were in. It was awful. So I'm glad he kind of fixed that. Since it is built, it's had its fair share of problems, from breaking down to not passing emissions, but he got that all taken care of, and he actually just put the new plates on it that he got today after registering it. So I'm one of the first ones to drive it since he's registered it. So right now I'm on some back roads, and it handles them surprisingly well. These cars do have an independent rear suspension. The power just kicks in. There's no grip with these tires. This car is also lowered on coilovers, and they actually ride really smooth. These are some of the best coilovers I've been on. So, but yeah, back there you can probably tell it got a little squirrely on me, but we handled it. Just take your foot out of it and you'll be fine. So on these corners here, it feels pretty solid. There's not a ton of body roll. I think that's partially due to the coilovers he has on this. These 0304 Cobras actually came with an independent rear suspension, but James bought this car and it already had a live rear axle swap in it. So as far as back roads go, it doesn't handle as well as stock one would with the independent rear suspension, but it still handles surprisingly well. This does have Brembo brakes, so it feels really solid when you put your foot into it. As soon as you hit it, it's responsive, so that's really good. There's a lot of peace of mind. In a car this powerful, you really do need good brakes to match up with the power you're putting down. You need to also be able to stop yourself, obviously. So it's really nice as far as that goes. The feel is really good with the pedal. As far as steering goes, it is a little loose. I can do that, and there's not really any turning happening, but I mean, overall it's just an incredibly solid feeling car. And I know a lot of people hate on Mustangs because of the cheap interior quality, especially on these years, but this one, only having 15,000 miles on it, it really does not feel cheap. Well, it still has cheap materials, but it feels like it's aged pretty well to me. Visibility in it's really good. It's like you're in a big bubble. And this car, like, you can tell, you're not buying this car for the interior quality. You're buying it for the power, and you certainly get that. Clutch is a little hard to get used to. It grabs right at the top, and compared to mine, which is more of a linear clutch, it's definitely different. But once you get going, it really isn't bad at all. First gear and reverse is the hardest part, but once you're past that, it's completely fine. The owner of this car, James, actually has a 2014 V6 Mustang as well, and he's in front of me right now, kind of showing me around these back roads. And I have my friend Joe behind me in his 6-liter GTO, so hopefully we'll be doing a video on that as well. Yeah, when I was driving through traffic earlier, I pulled up next to an E46 M3, and he wasn't having it. He looked over at me and just didn't look back after that. This thing's mean. It has an incredible road presence. In my opinion, this is one of the meanest looking Mustangs ever made. Just these Terminators, compared to the GTs of this generation, they have a different hood, a different front bumper, a different spoiler, different rear bumper. So really, as far as the body goes, it's a completely different beast. If you have one of these behind you, you know it's something special. Second gear is useless. It just spins. This is easily one of the craziest cars I've driven. You definitely have to be smart while you're driving this. It's not something you can just play with. Like I said, it handles surprisingly well in my opinion, especially for a car of this generation. There's not a ton of body roll. It kind of just dips in and goes. I still just love the brakes in this thing. They're awesome. One thing I do like about this car is going on these back roads here, you can really just cruise and handle fine. It's completely drivable, even with all this power. And then once you get to a straight road, if you want to put the power down, it's there in every gear, and it's awesome. A little backfire there. One thing I just can't get over is the torque. It's just always there, and the car's ready to go. Whenever you barely put your foot on it, it wants to go, and you can tell. Easily one of my favorite cars I've driven. I think the only thing that tops this right now is the Shelby GT350, which I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to drive that. And it's just crazy how these cars have changed over the years. You get the raw performance in the GT350, and you also have the luxury on the inside. It's a super nice interior in my opinion. And then with this, you still have that raw power, but the car it's more focused on the motor in this, I feel like, and the experience overall. It's not so much focused on comfort, and I think in cars like these, that's something that a lot of cars that are more performance oriented now are lacking. This just feels raw, and you just feel connected to the road, and I don't know, that's something I miss a lot in newer performance cars. It's a good thing he has the V6 as a daily, because this thing just sucks gas. It's insane. Another thing I like about this car is the color of it. It looks really, really good in person, but it's understated. It's not something that screams like, hey, look at me. The car's performance speaks for itself. These seats are actually really comfortable in my opinion. The bolstering fits me perfectly. I'm a skinnier guy, about 5'10". I have plenty of headroom. It's not a problem at all, and I have the seat up pretty high. You have no problem getting up to speed. Going by people, a lot of them just look at the car and completely break their necks when they hear it. It's awesome. It's just one of those cars that makes people's day whenever you go by in it. Some people might just think it's a regular Mustang, but whenever they hear it, they have to know that it's something much more than that. You really gotta treat this car with care, because it wants you to lose traction. It wants you to spin out. Like you really have to be paying attention and on your game to drive this car well and to be safe in it, because it's insane. It really is. It's a complete beast. I'm sure a stock one already is insane, but one that's built like this, it's pretty crazy. Just dips into the corners. This car is pretty low, like I said, so it likes to scrape on some stuff. Not while you're driving, but like parking lots are sometimes a challenge. Just pulling off of his street, it was noticeable. The sound of this thing is insane. I shouldn't have drove this. Now I want it. He does have aftermarket wheels on this car as well, and I think they look really good. I like them a lot. He's gonna switch them up though. Not sure what he's gonna do yet, but I think there's a lot of good options for this car that just look amazing. Obviously he's gonna do a staggered stance. Right now it's staggered. It's got 295s in the back, so you're certainly not lacking tire back there. You definitely have enough meat to keep you in line when you need to be. But at the same time, like if you put your foot down, it'll get out. It'll spin the tires, no problem. One thing I did notice about the car while I'm driving is the mirrors. They're like weirdly small. From the outside it looks fine, but practically they just don't do much. Now the rearview mirror, on the other hand, you can see just fine. The spoiler doesn't block anything. It's really low profile, but it still has a really good like presence from the back. This thing, it just looks mean from every angle, especially since this one's lowered. It just has that stance that's extremely, extremely mean. All right, you'll see here, you gotta rev it up quite a bit to you gotta ride the clutch. Luckily I haven't killed it, but sort of granny shifting here because of this clutch. You really got to push it down. It's extremely heavy. Like I said, it's a stage 3, so it's super heavy. When you put your foot down, you got to really put it down, and when you lift up, you just kind of got to find that spot at the top. So it's hard for me, since I've been driving it that long, it's hard for me to really get quick shifts in. It's a crazy car, that's for sure. It's not for the faint of heart who just want a car that performs well when they want it to, and just want to leisurely drive any other time. This thing, like, it means business all the time. Love it. It's an awesome, awesome car. Now that I've been driving it for a little while longer, I can definitely like get used to the clutch. It's a lot better than when I first started. It still isn't perfect. It's still, the RPM still kind of drop when you're letting it out, and you really gotta finesse it out. But overall, once you get into driving it, it really isn't that bad. This is easily the heaviest clutch I've ever felt, but it isn't awful or unbearable when you're moving along. You hardly even think about it. Everything works together super well on this car. The steering, once you give it a little input, it's pretty responsive. The brakes are extremely good, and the throttle response is great. So putting all those together just makes for a really, really awesome car. And the community that owns this car is like super tight-knit, which is also really cool. That's one thing about the car scene. It's just awesome when you have a big group of people that love the same thing and come together and like share a bond over it. I just think that's super cool. This is one of those cars I'm definitely not gonna want to get out of. It's just been so much fun. There's just something about American muscle that you can't replicate. It's awesome. Yeah, I don't think traffic is the strong point of this car. Alright, so that's going to do it for this review. Huge thanks to James, the owner of this car, for letting me review it. This is by far like one of the craziest cars I've ever driven. So much fun. It's such a rush to drive it. It's a hard car to drive, but it's a rewarding car to drive. So if you ever have the opportunity to drive one of these, do it, because you won't regret it. It's so much fun. So yeah, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.